On our 7th wedding anniversary, I saw a photo of my wife's stepbrother in the Museum of Broken Relationships. Underneath it was a note in my wife's handwriting. "Forgive me for only being able to protect you as family in this life." My wife texted me, "My brother's back in the country. Let's celebrate our anniversary another time." I looked at the text and laughed. "Isabel, I told you when we got married that I was a madman. You really shouldn't have provoked me." It started pouring rain as I left the museum, and I couldn't get a cab. My mood was already shot, so I just started walking, letting the rain soak me to the bone. By the time I got home, I was completely drenched. Isabel wasn't back yet. The nanny had already put our daughter to bed. I didn't turn on the lights, and the huge villa was eerily quiet. Click. The fingerprint lock opened. Isabel was home. I sat on the sofa without moving. When she flipped on the lights, she jumped. "Why are you sitting in the dark? And why are you all wet? Go dry off, quick." Isabel grabbed a towel to dry me, but I moved away, avoiding her touch. Realizing I was angry, Isabel sighed and said softly, "I'm sorry. We'll make up for our anniversary. My brother is back, and I had to go pick him up." "You had to?" I sneered. "Isabel, you've got some nerve." For the sake of our years of marriage, I decided to give her one last chance to come clean before I completely lost it. I looked at her coldly. "Isabel, who exactly is Peter to you? Is he your dear brother or your secret lover?" A flash of shock crossed Isabel's face before her expression hardened. She slammed the towel onto the sofa. "Leo, what the hell is wrong with you?" It was so obvious. She was way too sensitive. Whenever I used to get jealous of her being close with male clients, she would just tease me and say, "Well, you'd better keep a close eye on me, then." But now that the man in question was Peter, she lost control. Isabel stood up, fighting to control her anger. "If you have this much time on your hands, you should be thinking about how to please my father. He's still waiting for a grandson, you know? Isabel, I gave you a chance. You're the one who didn't take it. Don't blame me for what comes next." The next morning, Isabel glanced at the dining table, her face darkening. "Mrs. Wilson, where's my Blue Mountain coffee?" Isabel was a princess with a picky palate. Every morning, she needed her hand poured Blue Mountain coffee. There was no answer. Isabel called out a few more times. "So noisy," I said, wiping my mouth as I stood up. "Stop shouting. I had Mrs. Wilson take Gina to preschool. I'm driving to the office with you today." I dangled Isabel's car keys. "Then what about my breakfast?" I pushed a plate of last night's leftovers in front of her. "I had them pack this up from the restaurant yesterday. It was from a fancy place, after all. Can't let it go to waste. This is your punishment, sweetheart." Isabel's face stiffened, but she knew she was in the wrong and didn't dare argue. I turned away, a smirk playing on my lips. I waited for her in her Maybach. The moment Isabel's hand touched the door handle, I slammed my foot on the gas. The car shot forward. Startled, Isabel lost her balance and fell to the ground. In the rearview mirror, I could see her chasing after the car. I stuck my hand out the window and gave her a little wave. I glanced at the collection of car keys on the passenger seat. She wouldn't be driving any of her cars today. It was the peak of morning rush hour, so she probably wouldn't be able to get a cab, either. I left an old electric scooter for her. She's been a princess for long enough, it's time she got a taste of how the other half lives. "Isabel, the game is just beginning." But after just a few steps, she doubled over, curling up as she limped back toward the house. I was very pleased with the effects of the medicine. Isabel must be frantic right now. After all, her precious Peter was waiting for her at the office. Isabel wanted Peter to replace me. Dana from HR told me. I had personally promoted Dana. She was my most trusted person in the company. Once I discovered the affair, I knew Peter's return wasn't going to be simple. I just didn't expect Isabel to be this desperate. What? Did she think I was just going to roll over and die? Did she think that after all these years of a comfortable life, I was still just the long-suffering, dutiful husband? 2.5 hours later, Isabel finally showed up. I was in my office, leaning back in my chair with my eyes closed. Dana leaned in and whispered, "Leo, Ms. Vance is here. I don't know what's up with her today. The back of her dress was soaked, and she was wearing a ton of perfume. Her clothes were wet. That must have been sweat. And the perfume? Probably trying to cover up the smell. As Dana watched in shock, I stood up and walked out of my office. Sure enough, the first thing Isabel did was eagerly announce Peter's appointment. She didn't forget to shoot me a venomous glare. Starting today, Mr. Peter will be taking over the director's position from Leo. Let's all welcome him to the Vance Enterprises family. Isabel led the applause, but no one joined in. Bringing in an outsider to lead is a huge taboo in any workplace, especially since most of the company's original executives had left years ago, taking a large chunk of the old staff with them. The people here now were mostly recruits I had brought in myself, contacts I had built up during my time as a headhunter. They came to Vance Enterprises because they trusted me, so naturally, they weren't happy with this decision. In the dead silence, my applause was jarringly loud. Everyone stared at me, unable to understand what I was doing. "Welcome, Peter, my man," I said, walking towards him. "But honey, isn't putting him in my seat a bit of a waste of his talents? Why not just give him your chair? What do you say, Miss President?" I clapped as I got closer to Peter, then leaned in and whispered coldly, "How does that sound to you?" Isabel frowned, pulling Peter behind her protectively. He shot me a hateful look before lowering his head and mumbling, "Isabel, let's just forget it. This position isn't right for me." An hour ago, Peter wasn't nearly so obedient. He was lounging in my chair, his feet propped up on my desk, taunting me. "Leo, you're done here. Get out now while you still have some dignity." Dignity? Sorry, but dignity is the last thing I care about. I walked over to the desk and took off my Rolex. I grabbed a handful of Peter's hair and dragged him into the office bathroom. "What are you doing?" Peter yelped in pain. I turned on the faucet, plugged the drain, and shoved his face into the rising water. He struggled frantically. I watched his distorted face with satisfaction. "Telling me to get out? Who the hell do you think you are?" I yanked his head up by the hair. His face was red, his black eyeliner smeared like a ghost's makeup as he gasped for air. "Leo!" he screamed, furious. I pushed his head back under the water again and again. When I finally let go, he was trembling, clinging to the sink in terror. Leo, Isabel won't let you get away with this." I laughed dismissively and leaned in to pat his cheek. "You want my job? Go on, give it a shot. I dare you. See if I don't shove your head in the toilet next." Peter shrank back, his face a mask of fear as he shook his head wildly. I wiped my hands, then forcibly pulled a watch off his wrist and tossed it into the trash. "Leo, you're insane. Isabel gave this to you, right? I'm confiscating it. It's marital property." I'd been at the jeweler a few days ago to pick up a watch, and the saleswoman mentioned Isabel had ordered a new green Submariner. I had waited and waited, but I never expected she'd given it to this bastard. I lifted Peter's chin and flicked him on the forehead. "And you were right about one thing. I am insane." Peter's face scrunched up like a prune, but he didn't dare say another word. Peter's welcome meeting was a complete disaster. Isabel sweetly asked her assistant to escort Peter out. The next second, she stormed into my office to confront me. "Leo, what was that all about? This company's name is Vance. What I do here is none of your damn business." I shrugged nonchalantly, took a sip of Blue Mountain coffee, and went back to my documents. Isabel lost it. She swept the papers off my desk, her anger flaring. One after another, they're all so disobedient. I picked up my coffee cup and flicked my wrist. "Weren't you dying for some coffee? Here you go." "Leo." Isabel was furious, but remembering they were at the office, she lowered her voice. The office had glass walls. Isabel wiped her face and quickly pulled the blinds shut. Just like her father, can't stand to lose face. Cares more about appearances than anything else. I could feel her grinding her teeth. "Leo, what the hell are you doing?" I took out a tissue and wiped the coffee off a document. Such a shame. Now I'll have to print it all over again. "I'm not happy about you and Peter. What are you going to do about it?" "You." Isabel glanced at the blinds and spat. "I'll deal with you when we get home." Peter didn't have many skills, but he sure had a big mouth. As soon as I left work, I got a call from my father-in-law telling me to come to the family estate. I was curious to see what they had planned. At the estate, Peter and his mother, Brenda, were sitting beside my father-in-law, looking like they were ready to see me get what I deserved. "Dad, what's up?" A string of sandalwood prayer beads landed at my feet. "What do you think the company is? A place for you to throw a tantrum whenever you feel like it? You've disgraced the entire Vance family." My father-in-law was a very traditional man. The two things he cared about most in this world were his reputation and having an heir. With him around, there was no way Peter and Isabel could ever be together. And me? I was just a tool for Isabel to maintain a respectable life. I never could figure out why a rich heiress like Isabel would fall for an orphan like me, even defying her family to be with me. Now I understood. An orphan has no family, no support system. I couldn't make any waves. Even if she was found out, what could I do? I looked at Peter and gave him a cold smile. It made him shiver, and he tugged on Brenda's sleeve. "What are you looking at? A guy with no parents is a guy with no manners. Honey, Leo is already this arrogant. Imagine what he'll be like in the future. He'll be walking all over Isabel. I don't think he has any respect for the Vance family at all." Brenda fanned the flames while my father-in-law's face grew darker. Peter smirked. "Arthur, bring me the cane." I cracked my knuckles and walked toward them. Just as I was about to go crazy, someone called out, "Daddy!" Gina's bright voice rang out as she hugged my leg. "Gina, what are you doing here?" My expression instantly softened, and I patted her head. Isabel had arrived with her. "Gina, come give your uncle a hug." Peter picked up my daughter, kissing and touching her. It took everything I had not to chop his hands off. "Gina, wouldn't you like mommy to give you a little brother?" At that, my father-in-law's expression eased slightly. "Gina is already 6, he said grimly. "When are you two going to have a second child?" "Ask him," Isabel said, not defending me and throwing me under the bus instead. Hilarious. As if her frail body could handle it. Gina was an insecure child, always worried that if I had a son, I wouldn't want her anymore. Now, Gina was on the verge of tears. These people were doing this on purpose, weren't they? Taking advantage of the fact that I wouldn't lose my temper in front of my daughter. Screw you, I thought. Just you wait. I picked up Gina and walked toward the door. "Leo, what are you doing?" Isabel tried to stop me, but I shoved her aside. "Leo! Leo!" I ignored them no matter how much they yelled. 20 minutes later, Alex picked up Gina from me. I turned around, walked back toward the Vance estate, and grabbed a bottle of weed killer from the garden shed on my way. "Don't blame me. You forced me to do this." That day, I gave the whole family a nice shower with weed killer. Watching them scatter like rats was immensely satisfying. That's right. In their eyes, Gina and I were never really part of the family. The daughter-in-law from a lowly background wasn't worthy of joining the high and mighty Vance clan. The unloved granddaughter never received her grandfather's affection. On New Year's Eve, they would sit around, laughing and enjoying themselves. I would hold Gina, watching the fireworks outside while I rocked her to sleep. Gina once asked me, "Daddy, does Grandpa not like me?" "Of course not," I'd said. "Grandpa's just used to looking serious." Back then, I secretly thought that if I just raised Gina to be exceptional enough, they would change their minds.
"I'm sorry, Gino."
Daddy was wrong. People who don't like you will never like you no matter what you do. Just like me. After all these years, I'm still not worth a single hair on Peter's head. It doesn't matter. From today on, I'll prepare everything for Gina. I'll take back everything that should have been ours. After I taught them a lesson, the Vances didn't dare to mess with me again. Isabel moved out of the house, which suited me just fine. Even if she hadn't left, I would have kicked her out. After all, I found her filthy. A divorce was definitely happening, but not before I got my money. In the first week, I audited the company's books. I found several discrepancies in the accounts going back years. The money had been transferred to an overseas account. It either went into Peter's pocket or Isabel was trying to move assets. There was another possibility. Isabel was planning to start her own company. I understood instantly. No wonder Vance Enterprises had been struggling for the past few years. Yet Isabel wasn't the least bit worried. She never intended to take over the company from her father. Once she had her own power base, her father would no longer have any leverage over her. And there would be nothing standing in the way of her and Peter. Gina and I would be discarded. Isabel, oh Isabel. You'd even scheme against your own father just to be with Peter. The game just got a lot more interesting. Don't worry, I'm gonna flip the script. I'm not a man who likes to waste time. I prefer the simplest, most brutal methods to achieve my goals. I took the whole story straight to Mr. Vance. I didn't spare him any face, laying out all the evidence one piece at a time. Isabel's ambition. Isabel and Peter. Brenda was so terrified she hid in the kitchen, not daring to come out. Arthur Vance's face fell, the wrinkles around his mouth drooping. He took several deep breaths. I was almost worried he'd have a heart attack and die right there, which would have been no fun at all. Finally, he squeezed out a single sentence. What do you want? Spoken like a true Vance. His own daughter screws up, and he turns around and asks me what I want. Brenda came out, trembling, and said placatingly, Honey, Isabel and Peter, they just made a mistake. Arthur backhanded her across the face. Get out. Look at the fine son you raised. He put all his strength into that slap. Brenda fell to the floor, clutching her face, tears in her eyes but not daring to speak. My demands are simple. Get back the assets Isabel transferred, I stated. Then we get a divorce, and I want her to walk away with nothing. Arthur laughed as if he'd heard the most absurd thing. Leo, you've got a lot of nerve. What? You don't agree? Then just wait while I slowly destroy all of you. Leo, a man should have some magnanimity. Just let this go. The wise man knows when to yield. Pa! I spat a mouthful of tea leaves right in his face. You're the one who doesn't know when to yield. Once everything was out in the open, Isabel and Peter stopped hiding. To keep Peter by her side, she fired her secretary of 10 years simply because he was a man and she was afraid Peter would get jealous. Then she and Peter started carpooling to work every day, separating in the parking garage before coming up to the office. They were getting off on the thrill of it all. Whatever, I'll just go crazy. If Peter went to Isabel's office to get lovey-dovey, I'd storm in and slap him a couple of times to remind him of his place. If Isabel waited for Peter in the parking lot after work, I'd deliberately keep Peter late, making him brew my coffee and organize my files. If I ran into Peter in the men's room, I'd lock him in a stall, sending Isabel into such a panic she almost charged into the men's room herself. If either of them dared to say a single word against me, I'd just start shouting homewrecker, and they'd shut up immediately. Within a week, Peter had vanished from the company. But I never expected his second return would bring me such a big surprise. The company had just closed a major project, and as usual, Isabel and I took the employees out to celebrate. The lights were dim, the place buzzing with noise. I twisted my wedding ring, savoring the burn of alcohol. I could feel Isabel tense up beside me, and I couldn't help but laugh. After playing the part of a loving couple for so many years, the moment Peter came back, she couldn't even pretend anymore. Isabel was on edge all night, constantly checking her phone. The sofa cushion bounced as she suddenly shot up and hurried away. Around the corner, I saw a hand pull her into a side room. I stood up without a sound and followed them. Through the door, I couldn't make out their whispers. Then, I heard a few muffled moans from Isabel. I knew that sound well. It was her in heat. The noises grew more and more explicit. A few passers-by stopped to watch the show, but my glare sent them running. The mirror on the wall reflected my dark expression. I thought I was long past caring, but the bloody scratches my fingernails left on my own skin told me otherwise. Leo, you can still feel pain. You don't know this, Isabel, but at the orphanage they used to call me the psycho. The meager donations we received weren't enough to support all of us. The older kids who didn't get enough to eat would steal from the younger ones. One time, 2 older boys dragged me into a supply closet. They took my food, and I lunged at one of them, sinking my teeth into his arm. He screamed in pain, but I wasn't much better off. One of them pulled my hair while the other kicked and punched me. It hurt. Everything inside me ached. But I knew I couldn't let go. I couldn't let them think I was weak. By the time they found us and pulled us apart, a patch of my scalp was torn out, and I was diagnosed with a mild concussion. I had nearly torn a chunk of flesh from the other boy's arm, leaving a permanent, mangled scar. He cried his eyes out. But me, I held back every single tear. After that, I grew up in peace at the orphanage. Until I met Isabel. She was gentle, kind, and graceful. After I rejected her, she would quietly wait for me on my way home from my part-time job every day, never getting too close, never bothering me. Later, she shed her princess persona and started working with me at the Greasy Spoon Diner. Her designer clothes got stained with grease and grime. She was a rich girl, after all, clumsy and clueless about real work. When she first started, she was always breaking plates. The boss wanted to fire her several times, but he couldn't resist the fact that her pretty face was drawing in a crowd of young guys, which boosted business. So, the boss just told me to help her out more. She used her softness to pull out all my thorns. I thought she was my salvation. I never imagined she was just pushing me into another abyss. I'm miserable and they're not getting off easy. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the corner and slammed it against the door. A moment later, Isabel emerged, her clothes disheveled, still breathing heavily. After a few seconds, Peter came out too. He made no effort to hide the love bites on his neck, as if showing them off to me. My hand gently caressed his neck. Peter flinched, goosebumps rising on his skin. Isabel stood to the side, looking guilty. I curled my fingers, digging my nails into his flesh. Peter screamed. I dragged my nails down his skin, leaving a raw, bloody track. You won't escape the pain I've been through. Isabel tried to grab me, but I stopped her with a single warning. If you don't want me to release the recording I just made, you won't touch me. Isabel was such a coward. She just stood there and watched me torment Peter, just like how her father, Arthur, had humiliated Brenda right in front of me. Isabel had inherited all of her father's selfishness and false pride. Before I left, I circled back for one last blow. I took the pin from my hair and sliced a hole in the back of Peter's pants, right over his ass. He scrambled into the bathroom, yelling for Isabel to buy him new pants. The sight of him frantically trying to pull up his trousers was so ridiculous it swept away all my gloom. I walked out from around the corner, clapping and laughing. A colleague asked me what was so funny. Nothing, I said. Just saw something hilarious. By the time Isabel returned to her seat, we were playing Truth or Dare. I drew a dare card. It said, "Kiss a woman in the room." A chorus of suggestive cheers erupted. Isabel gave me a deep look, a look of smug certainty that was absolutely disgusting. I lifted my chin and looked at the intern across the table, who was busy on her phone. "Dana," I said, "how about you give your big brother a kiss?" The atmosphere shifted instantly. No one dared to cheer anymore. Isabel stared at me in disbelief. She grabbed my wrist, threw a credit card on the table, and pulled me to my feet. "Leo was just joking," she announced. "We have to go. You all have fun." Once we were a good distance from the bar, I yanked my hand away. "Let go. You're filthy." Isabel put her hands on her hips, her chest heaving as she paced back and forth. "Leo, what the hell is your problem? Talk to me." I cleaned out my ear, then reached into her pocket and pulled out her cigarettes and a box of matches. Lighting a cigarette with a match was her habit. I blew a smoke ring in her face. "My problem?" Isabel shoved me hard. "You're a psycho," she screamed. "I'm giving you 1 week to put the money back. Otherwise, you'll see just how much crazier I can get." I dragged my exhausted body home. In the dead of night, I heard a faint cry and sprinted upstairs. Gina was curled up under the covers, tears on her face. She must have had a nightmare. I gently patted her back. She suddenly opened her eyes and whimpered, "Daddy?" I turned on the nightlight, but Gina only cried harder. She took my hand, saw the scratches, and started blowing on them gently, asking between sobs, "Daddy? Does it hurt?" I stroked her head. "Don't cry, baby. Daddy doesn't feel a thing. Daddy, I don't want mommy anymore. Please don't get hurt again, okay?" It was like a punch to the gut. My mind went blank, and my hand froze. I pulled Gina into a fierce hug as tears streamed down my face. How could this be? My Gina, she knew everything. I fought to control my emotions. Gina, I asked, who told you that? Uncle Peter said you and Mommy are getting a divorce. Sniffle, Daddy. I'm so scared. Harming my daughter was like stabbing me in the heart. Peter, you just wait. After I got Gina back to sleep, I collapsed on the sofa, unable to move. Cold moonlight streamed through the window. Just a few months ago, this house was filled with laughter. Every morning, Isabel would tie my tie, and I'd kiss her on the forehead. Gina would cling to Isabel, begging to be carried downstairs. At the breakfast table, Gina would chatter away while Isabel and I exchanged helpless but loving glances. Warm milk, yogurt with oats, and Blue Mountain coffee, all in our matching family mugs. The daughter, daddy, and mommy patterns all lined up in a row. How did it all come to this? Arthur told me to know my place. Isabel said all women in her circle are like this. Even the director of the orphanage advised me, you're an orphan. It wasn't easy for you to get this far. Yeah, it wasn't easy at all. That's why I'll take everything except Isabel. On the last day of the 1-week deadline, I didn't get confirmation that Isabel had returned the money. Instead, the nanny told me Isabel had picked up Gina. Isabel, where's Gina? I grabbed her by the collar, demanding an answer. Isabel pried my hands off. Given your current mental state, she said coolly, I have serious doubts about your ability to care for Gina. Do you have any idea how close I am to killing you? I believe you, but you'll never see Gina again. Ah, Isabel, using your own daughter as a bargaining chip. That's all you've got, isn't it? If you want to see Gina, follow me. I followed Isabel to the underground garage. In a brief moment, I sent a text to my assistant, Alex, go to the Vance estate. The files are in the left drawer of my office desk. Isabel drove me to the love nest she shared with Peter. Peter was sitting on the sofa, eating cherries and spitting the pits in my direction. Isabel walked over to him, and he stood up to wrap his arm around her waist. You're the best, babe, he teased. Uncharacteristically, Isabel ignored him, pushing his hand away and sitting on the sofa. She pinched the bridge of her nose, looking exhausted. I brought him here for you. Now stop making trouble. Whatever he did to you before, you can pay him back today. And Peter did. He slapped me and pushed my head into the sink full of water. Isabel didn't react. She just sat there with her eyes closed, escaping, as if by not looking it wasn't really happening. Peter was gloating. Leo, know your place. You'll never be worth a single hair on my head. For Gina, I had to endure it. Thankfully, the pain didn't last long. Arthur Vance burst through the door with his men. Isabel, you ungrateful daughter. Peter, what are you doing? Arthur roared. Peter froze. Isabel shot to her feet. Both of them were stunned. A few minutes later, my stepmother-in-law, Brenda, was draping a blanket over me and respectfully feeding me bird's nest soup. Isabel and Peter were kneeling on the floor. Look at what you two have done. Did you really think I was dead? If anything happens to my granddaughter, I'll never forgive you. Dad, what are you talking about? Don't you know Leo is sick? Yes, that was the file I'd had Alex deliver. Isabel's eyes widened as she looked at me. Why didn't you say anything? She looked down, her voice low. I'm sorry. If I had known, I wouldn't have. I snatched the soup from her and threw it on Isabel. Sorry, fixed everything. What would we need the police for? Leo, I know what you're trying to do. You called me here so I would take your side. You two are to cut off all contact immediately. Arthur slammed his cane into Isabel's back. Her face went white with pain. That's not enough. I have 2 more demands. First, all the assets Isabel transferred will be moved to my personal account, for me to manage. Second, from now on, no one is to take Gina anywhere without my permission. Isabel's wings weren't fully grown yet. She still had to rely on her father's authority to maintain her position. Besides, she really did want her daughter. Isabel agreed to everything. I propped up my chin and jutted my lip out. But I'm still not happy. When a man is sick, his bad mood probably affects his recovery, right? I feigned a look of distress, my eyes landing on Peter. Unexpectedly, Brenda, who was standing beside me, rushed forward and slapped Peter across the face. Peter, you've disappointed your uncle and me so much. Isabel's heart broke for him. She wanted to protect him but was too afraid of me to move. But Brenda's slap wasn't for nothing. When Arthur looked at her, there was a newfound approval in his eyes. A strategic retreat. Arthur must have thought Brenda was a woman who understood the bigger picture. It seems there was a reason Brenda, a former dancer, was able to marry Arthur and bring Peter into the family. At the very least, she understood her husband's temperament perfectly. Peter, compared to your mother, you're pathetic. And you, Isabel, if you had half your father's brains, you wouldn't have let this guy play you for a fool. The assets Isabel had siphoned off finally made their way into my account after a long and winding journey. At Arthur's request, I took a temporary leave from the company to rest and recover at home. Before I left, I took a file from the safe. I once thought I would keep this secret buried forever. Looking back now, maybe it was all part of a larger plan. During my leave, Isabel came to see me once. She didn't look well. The exhaustion was etched deep into her face. With no one to style her, her clothes were strange and ill-fitting, lacking any of her former flair. She said, "Leo, can we please stop fighting? Peter and I are over. Please don't give him a hard time anymore. He had a tough life growing up with his mom. Even after he came to our family, he was always so careful. I used to tease him, but he never told on me. He'd even cover for me when I got into trouble. Enough. I have no interest in hearing your love story. My terms are the same. We get a divorce and you walk away with nothing." Isabel's eyes narrowed. "Leo, that's impossible. Then we have nothing more to talk about." I turned to leave, but Isabel wrapped her arms around me. The difference in strength between a man and a woman was just too great. I gave up struggling. Her voice choked with tears. "Lately, I just feel like something's missing. I feel so empty inside." That afternoon, Lynn, the secretary Isabel had fired, brought me what I needed. I handed him a check. "You've worked hard all these years. Vance Enterprises did you wrong. I've written you a letter of recommendation. I wish you all the best for your future." Even though everything was almost settled, I still had a nagging feeling of unease. I felt like something was about to happen. I was sunbathing in the yard the day Brenda and Peter showed up at my door. The mother and son stood before me, arrogant and smug, with a woman behind them carrying bags of their things. Brenda was all smiles, but there was an icy chill to her. Like a snake flicking its tongue, it sent a shiver down my spine. "Leo, dear, your father sent me to take care of you. Now that you and Peter are both sick, your father is worried." "Yes, this is perfect." The two of them stared at me, bewildered. "Leo, do you really think being sick means you've won? Isabel loves me. She only married you because you were easy to manage." Brenda really did have some skills to have convinced Arthur of this. How interesting. "Hey, bro, you're sick? Then why are you standing? You should sit down and rest. Don't wear yourself out." I dialed Alex's number. "Alex, get Mr. Vance and Ms. Vance over here for me. Tell them if they don't come, they can get ready to collect some bodies." I clapped my hands, and several large dogs came running from the backyard, barking furiously at Peter and Brenda. The two of them fell to the ground in terror. "Sorry about that. As long as you two behave, they only bite people, not other dogs." Isabel and Arthur arrived at almost the same time. Isabel had come in such a hurry that her hair was a mess. I shrugged. "He says he's sick too. What are we going to do?" Isabel tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Leo, let me explain. Leo, a man needs to see the big picture. I promise you, once the child is better, I'll give you custody. Just stop this." Hilarious. This was just too hilarious. I laughed so hard I doubled over, tears streaming down my face. "Leo, don't be like this. Acting all crazy, what kind of behavior is that?" Still laughing, I clapped my hands, went inside, and brought out a file which I tossed to Isabel. "Isabel, for the past few years, you've been taking business trips abroad every month. You were really going to see Peter, weren't you? Did you know your body was already breaking down? This is your medical report from a year ago. Take a look for yourself and see if you can still produce a grandson. And as for me, I'm not sick at all." Isabel's hands trembled as she opened the file. The next second, she lunged at Peter like a wild animal. She wrapped her hands around his throat, her eyes wide with fury. "I gave you everything, and you betrayed me," she roared, shoving him away. Peter clutched his neck, gasping for air. Isabel stormed out. Arthur raised his cane, about to strike Peter. "What have I done to deserve this? What have I done?" But the shock was too much. He clutched his chest and was caught by Brenda as he fell. "Honey, are you okay? Honey." This was all Peter's doing. I didn't know. Spectacular. Truly spectacular. I'll never forget this masterpiece of a high society soap opera. Brenda fumbled to call 911 while Peter crawled to her side, begging her not to abandon him. I turned, went back into the house, and shut the door, blocking out the chaos. I was hoping to get some rest while it was still early. But then I got a call from the hospital, informing me that Isabel had been in a car accident. "Mr. Nash, Ms. Vance is currently in emergency surgery. Her uterus was severely damaged. We need the family's consent." The person on the other end asked if I wanted to try and save it. I said, "No, don't bother. Didn't you say the situation was urgent? What are you waiting for? Just cut it out." After hanging up, I went to the hospital to see Isabel. The doctor said she also had nerve damage in her brain and might never be able to speak normally again. Seeing the woman I once loved deeply lying in the ICU, covered in tubes, I can't describe the feeling. Arthur had also collapsed. He'd had a stroke. With a crooked mouth, he slurred. Where did you hide Gina?" "Arthur, I'm here today to make a deal. You transfer all of your shares to me, and I'll take over Vance Enterprises from now on. I promise to take care of you in your old age and pay for Isabel's medical treatment. If you don't agree, I'll release evidence of Isabel's professional misconduct, and we'll let the board of directors decide everything. If you agree, hold out your hand, and I'll give you the ink pad to stamp the papers." Arthur closed his eyes, a single tear rolling down his cheek. After a long moment, he held out his hand, covered in age spots. In that instant, he seemed to have lost all the bravado of the business titan he once was. Now he was just a helpless old man. It was all over. As for Brenda and her son, Arthur had kicked them out long ago. The two of them went around town spreading the Vance family's dirty laundry, and the reputation the family cherished so much was finally dragged through the mud. Of course, all this high society gossip created some serious trouble for Vance Enterprises. I had to pull several all-nighters to clean up the mess. But before I even had to lift a finger, Rachel's husband took care of the mother and son for me. That young man was far more ruthless than me. I heard that Peter had some of his parts removed. After that, I never heard from them again. The days that followed were busy, but whenever I had free time, I would take Gina to the orphanage to do charity work. I donated a lot of money to the orphanage and even built a new one. I held Gina's hand as we walked out of the orphanage. The evening sun cast a warm glow on the children's faces. They were smiling so happily, so much more innocent than I was at their age. If I could, I truly wish this world would have no more people like me. Behind the madness is a world of sorrow. Life never left me any way to retreat.